New Jersey, 1775. The American Revolution has just begun, and white colonists are screaming about freedom and liberty from British rule. Meanwhile, 500,000 black people remain chained in slavery, their own freedom never part of the conversation. This was America's founding contradiction, a nation fighting for freedom while denying it to an entire race of people. But in Monmouth County, something different was about to happen, something that would turn the Revolutionary War on its head and make slave owners sleep with one eye open. You see, while white patriots talked about breaking their chains to Britain, one enslaved man looked at his actual chains, at the hypocrisy surrounding him, and decided he wasn't waiting for anyone to free him. But before we get too deep into this story, if you enjoy these sort of untold black stories about our heroes, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We need each and every one of you to help spread the message. Now, back to the video. You see, folks, one thing you need to understand is just how sick and twisted America was back in the 1700s. Out of 2.5 million people living in the colonies, 450,000 were enslaved. Families were being torn apart and sold like livestock. Children as young as 6 years old were treated as property worth hundreds of pounds, passed down in wills like furniture. Even the supposedly peaceful Quakers owned slaves. By 1758, New Jersey Quakers had passed an edict requiring members to free their slaves at age 21 and provide them with education. Many complied, but not all. Around 1753, a baby boy named Titus was born into this hell on John Corley's farm in Monmouth County, New Jersey. Corley's was supposedly a Quaker, but he had a reputation for drinking, cursing, and brawling. More importantly, he was known as one of the cruelest slave owners around, beating Titus and his other slaves for the smallest infractions. When Titus turned 21 in 1774, Corley's refused to free him. Even when a delegation of Quakers came to his farm and threatened to expel him from their community if he didn't free his slaves, Corley's told them he has not seen it his duty to give them their freedom. Picture this from Titus's perspective. He watched other enslaved people his age get freed by their Quaker masters while he remained in bondage. He watched white colonists protest in the streets about their so-called slavery to Britain while keeping him in actual chains. In November 1775, Titus decided he'd rather die free than live enslaved. At 21 years old, he grabbed a bag of clothes and vanished into the night. But where does a runaway slave go in 1775 when the very people screaming about freedom want to keep you enslaved? Titus had heard about Lord Dunmore's proclamation. Lord Dunmore, the British governor of Virginia, had just made a promise. Any enslaved person who escaped rebel masters and fought for the crown would receive their freedom. Within 1 month, over 800 enslaved people showed up in Virginia, ready to fight. George Washington, meanwhile, had banned black soldiers from the Continental Army in July 1775. Only when Washington got desperate for more soldiers did he change his tune. So Titus headed south and enlisted with the British. He changed his name from Titus, given to him by his enslaver, to Ty, a symbol of his new identity and freedom. By 1779, the war in New Jersey had devolved into civil war. Most loyalists stuck close to British strongholds along the coast, while Patriots controlled the interior. At Sandy Hook, a thin peninsula stretching into New York's lower bay, Ty found his base of operations. Ty was given command of a 24-man all-black unit called the Black Brigade. These were former slaves and free black men with a score to settle. Sandy Hook became home to Refugee Town, a community of black and white loyalists who had fled Patriot persecution. On July 15, 1779, Colonel Ty led his first documented raid. He and 50 fighters landed at Shrewsbury and struck nearby farms like lightning. They captured 80 heads of cattle, 20 horses, massive amounts of supplies, and 2 Shrewsbury residents. What made Ty absolutely devastating was his intimate knowledge of Monmouth County. Born and raised there, he knew every swamp, river, and hiding spot. Under cover of darkness, his men would row across from Sandy Hook, strike targets 10 to 20 miles inland, and disappear before anyone could react. the documented evidence of Ty's effectiveness is overwhelming. On June 9, 1780, Ty led about 20 black and white loyalists in a surprise attack on Captain Barnes Smock's house, where several Patriot militia officers had gathered. After a brief firefight, Ty captured Smock and several prisoners, personally destroyed their 4-pound cannon, and escaped with 4 horses. The Norwich Packet newspaper reported, Ty, with his party of about 20 blacks and whites, last Friday afternoon took and carried off prisoners Captain Barnes Smock and Gilbert Van Mater. They described Ty as a Negro who bears the title of colonel and commands a motley crew at Sandy Hook. Notice that language, motley crew. Classic racist dismissal, but the fear underneath was unmistakable. June 1780 marked Colonel Ty's peak. In one incredible week, he conducted 3 separate raids that shattered Patriot resistance in Monmouth County. By week's end, he had captured or killed most of the militia leadership and destroyed their artillery. The fear became so intense that when Governor Livingston ordered the remaining 17 members of the Monmouth County militia to hunt Ty down, only 2 showed up. This black man had become so terrifying that armed men refused to face him. But every warrior's story has an ending. In September 1780, Colonel Ty took a musket ball through the wrist, and while this wound seemed minor initially, it became infected with tetanus, and lockjaw set in. Colonel Ty died that month at just 27 years old. His documented military career had lasted barely 1 year, but he had become the most feared and respected loyalist guerrilla fighter of the Revolutionary War. Even his enemies admitted that the Black Brigade were some of the most effective raiders of the conflict. After Ty's death, Stephen Bucky took command of the Black Brigade, but they were never as effective without Ty's local knowledge. When the British evacuated in 1783, the surviving Black Brigade members went to Canada. Colonel Ty's story teaches powerful lessons. He freed himself rather than waiting for liberation. He armed himself and fought back against oppression. He turned his knowledge of the land from a tool of oppression into a weapon of liberation. He proved that organized resistance could be devastatingly effective and that former slaves could not only fight, but lead with devastating skill. Today, the National Park Service and Sandy Hook Foundation are working to tell Colonel Ty's story properly. They're creating educational experiences at the very location where he made his base and planned his raids. His story proves that resistance works, that organization matters, that courage can overcome impossible odds. When you see injustice today, remember Colonel Ty. Remember that one person with conviction and skill can strike fear into the hearts of powerful oppressors. Share this story. Make sure Colonel Ty's name is remembered. The system tried to erase him from history, but we won't let that happen. Every time you tell someone about the runaway slave who became the most feared warrior of the Revolutionary War, you strike a blow against forces that want these stories buried. If you enjoyed this story about Colonel Ty, check out our video on Tunis Campbell, the preacher that terrified the Klan with his 300-man strong militia. This was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching.